Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany and Dr. Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
I am so excited. It is my turn in your new studio.
You now get to have your inaugural moment in here.
I love it.
Do we feel like professionals now? Now that we're...
I'm going to say no because it's so nice and comfortable in here.
It is
Like, I guess to me, when I thought about a studio, I was thinking of like when you see radio DJs and they're like plastic walls and stuff and like headphones on and stuff. And
all the black stuff on the walls.
Yes. And no, this is very lovely. It's very Joanna Gaines times 10. And
wow. I'm just glad that we're finally here. We've waited a long time for an official area to record.
I love the closet, man.
Hey, we can go back. There's a closet. If you want to go downstairs, we can head downstairs.
No, we have evolved. And I will say, y'all, I made it here in one piece. Bethany is out in Bumble, FUSA. Why? I will always ask. I thought maybe me driving out here, I'd be like, aha, I see why. And quite the opposite, ma'am. I'm like, I don't get it. I'm
just disappointed you didn't show up in your Wranglers and your cowboy boots and your cap. I was fully expecting that to walk through the door this morning.
I wasn't sure how to prepare for my foray into the wilderness out here.
At least you've got a cowboy shirt on, so I mean, you can blend in easily enough out here. So
yes, but I do need to make sure I get out before the sun sets. Anywho, it's beautiful and congratulations, and I'm very happy to be here. And I do want to give you a shout out. And I know Dr. Jones talked about it a couple weeks ago. You had your Bethany Brunch client appreciation, and I know you invited everybody, podcast listeners, to come out too. And what a phenomenal event. And I think my favorite part, I felt exclusive. I felt like I belonged to a club.
Yes.
Because it was all Bethany clients or Bethany fans. And so it was such an intimate event. Like, you had name tags for everybody, like a personalized name tag that was funny for each client that was there. I thought that was beyond, talk about a personal touch. Like, that was just, I think that made everybody smile, feel seen, feel important. It was personalized. From the moment you got there to the moment you left, had us all a personalized book choice.
Yes.
So it was unexpected. And I thought too, like when you and I were kind of thinking like, okay, what about these conversation lulls? Is it going to be awkward? I mean, I think just the fact that we all felt like we had a kinship because we were all smart because we were Bethany clients. So you could tell the level of intelligence in the room was just through the roof because we all were, coached by the best and knew that everybody in that room had amazing practices because...
Yes.
No, but it was a really good. I felt very special. So I congratulate you on that as well, my friend. I hope you're going to keep that tradition up because it was such a phenomenal event.
It has to continue.
And this coming from an introvert that usually dreads...
those social interactions.
Yes.
I know.
And I tell you, I wasn't dreading it per se because I knew you would be there.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise I would have dreaded it. And I stayed the whole time.
You stayed the whole time. You were there early, stayed late.
It didn't feel like it. It didn't drain me.
A lot of people did. We told them it could be come and go because it's a long period of time that we were brunching. And I was really surprised and pleased, so happy that it was so comfortable and so fun that people stayed.
It was
almost
a come
the whole
and
time.
Nobody was a go. Like, it was all a come. The room was like packed.
Yes.
It just felt very intimate.
Yeah.
And,
Well, we'll have to make that a fall tradition.
Yes.
Without
I agree.
a doubt.
I approve. Okay, so getting down to business here, I wanted to, when I'm, it's been a while since I've had a chance to ask you what's going on with your other clients, because I've been hogging up the spotlight with all of my drama. And so I finally was like, okay, let's talk about other people and what's going on. And so I think you mentioned, if you don't mind talking about a gentleman that reached out to you after reading one of Lulu's magazines. And Lulu was there. Lulu was there.
Oh.
She's just a beautiful, charming... just
lovely.
something about her presence is so calming. She just has a way of making you feel seen.
She is wonderful.
And she's so funny.
And for those that don't know, Lulu is, I call her the it of North Texas Dentistry Magazine. She's just everything related to North Texas Dentistry Magazine. And so I was so excited she came. She was great to have.
Which, and I've told her before, we get a lot of publications. Yeah. And that is the one I look forward to. Yeah. And that is the one that I read from cover to cover because it has so much useful content. And so anyway, I think that a like-minded gentleman, I think you said, and I'll quit talking and let you talk here, but I think you said he read an article in Lulu's magazine that you wrote. And so I'll turn it over to you. If you could talk about what you wrote about. And
yeah, so I wrote an article about basically the environment in an office being wrong, a culture conundrum. And so the article was very just clear on what is a culture problem, what are some of the signs to look for in a culture problem. And so this gentleman had reached out to me. He had been experiencing problems in his practice, but he wasn't able to really put his finger on what was wrong. He knew it wasn't the practice that he had always had. And this changed pretty much post-pandemic is what he said. And so...
And you said he was in... he's been practicing for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a new 3-4 year practice or 9-10 year practice.
I think the same practice, if I remember, he told me the same practice for 47 years.
Wow.
So very mature practice and was stable, churning, like no issues up until the pandemic. And then, of course, everybody experienced massive changes during that pandemic time. And he said he just had been unable to put his finger on why it wasn't working the way that it used to. And once he read the culture article, he reached out to me because he was like, that's it. That's my problem. It is actually a culture problem.
Which, how cool for you to know that you reached somebody.
Yeah.
But that's the reason I'm sure you write those articles.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, to help people that... And it was really refreshing for me to know that he'd been trying to figure it out and couldn't really identify what the problem was. And so, it's interesting as I've been getting to know him more, it's not that it all comes down to one person, but sometimes one or two people on the team can throw off the culture and create what looks like a massive problem. But when you kind of sift through everything, it comes down to maybe one or two people on the team. Not always. I won't say that that's always. But in this particular case, I am very new to his practice, getting to know it. But I have a feeling that it's going to boil down to one or two people on his team that have kind of kept the practice in chaos since the pandemic. And so, I think it resurfaced this culture discussion that we've had. I can think of him, and then also it reminded me of some of the issues that you've had lately. When we really think about what you've walked through over these last few months, it was interesting. You and I were touching base over the phone, and you said something about how you had encouraged your team and just said, I'm feeling so good about this team. I'm just so proud of all you. Thank you for all that you do. And you were telling me that it just feels peaceful and calm and happy, and it's just a good environment right now. And this is a couple months after all the changes that you've made, and 2 people are gone off the team. And while those were hard changes, I think it's another point that those 2 were kind of at the epicenter of making everything feel off on your team. And now in the wake of that, you've got this kind of relief, this environment you've been looking for.
Which I think, to me, we were so in tune with culture. We knew it was a culture issue. And we did all the culture stuff for so long. And yet it still took me so long to really pinpoint and then really make that decision then to be like, this is what needs to happen. I mean, it took a very long time, whether that's me being slow or me being cautious or me being, in denial about who the true problem is. So it's funny, like in this gentleman's case, it's like he's practicing for 47 years. He's probably seen and done everything.
Yeah.
And then to kind of, all of us that are sinking our, trying not to sink and noses above the water after the pandemic, it's interesting to see that, how impactful that has been for a man who you would imagine knows everything. He could school the rest of us on everything if he has practiced that long. So, funny that I was in tune to culture and yet still had the issues, and he's not in tune to culture, and now he's going, that is my culture issue. Mm-hmm. But I'll say even yesterday, for example, was a school holiday in Texas. So we were busy, and I didn't think about this until yesterday evening, where I was like, normally I would have been like, oh my God, are all hands on deck? Do we have enough people in the front? Do we have a sterilization tech? We're going to need all of this extra help. And we had 2 people at the front, as opposed to our normal, 4?
4.
Didn't miss a single beat. It never felt stressed. I didn't feel stressed going into the day. Sterilization somehow was fine. Like I helped pitched in, but it was like I just said, it was light and it was easy. Yeah. And so I don't know what I'm trying to say about that, but other than I guess maybe the point is like the culture just makes all the difference of who's there. And
I think you make a really good point that sometimes you can be fighting for a good culture. You can be doing all of the active steps to create and foster a good culture, but that ultimately there can be people that are holding that progress back from happening. And I appreciate the cautiousness that you take before you dismiss a team member. And yet now here we are on the other side of it, and it's like that really was the holdback, and potentially even considering that the culture is there, has been there amongst every other team member, but it was just those 2 that tended to resist it and then made it feel like the whole culture is off. But really, when we think about it, once those 2 were moved out, it just kind of naturally existed. Like it probably always was existing. It's just those 2 kind of created this, I don't know, this
rift in it, and then they're gone, and then like a puzzle, just magnet coming together. It's like we're back together again.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, like, then what did you counsel this gentleman? Like what?
So I'll give you kind of 2 examples, because with him, I'm just starting. So we just kind of did what I call a culture assessment. He connected with the article and was like, I don't know what I need. I just know something's off. And I said, well, hey, let me do a culture assessment. That's where I do a lot of, the team members fill out a lot of paperwork for me, a lot of thought-provoking questions. They do a personality assessment. I have some phone calls with a few key team members to get some subjective opinions over the phone. And then, of course, the doctor fills out that annual retreat that you love so much. The doctor fills that out as a part of the homework.
Yucky.
And it's a thorough and intense process, but it's very illuminating for me. Every time I can see patterns and trends and things that stand out in that process. And so for him, we just finished that culture assessment. And so my recipe for him is going to be, we've got to do a reset. There's definitely some members on the team that have the pre-pandemic mindset, the culture that he actually has envisioned. I see that represented on some of those team members. But then we've got probably half the team that just doesn't. And so we've got to all get back on the same page. The same process that you walk through with your team, we've just got to create that for this particular practice. So I'm at the start with him. But I just did this recently with another newer client of mine. I had my first trip out to his office, and same thing, very broken culture, just my heart breaks for these doctors that are in this situation, because it's so anxiety producing. Like, you just are constantly on edge.
And that's how I found myself. And that's what I guess I'm saying, like, I felt lighter. Mm-hmm. It was like it was a non-issue. And looking back, I'm like, I remember like just like the physical body tensing or my stomach feeling this kind of like knots.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that on a busy day before or after. And I haven't felt that way in the last month going into work. Yeah. It's just been a very light, that tension, that anxiety is not there.
Dissipates. Yeah. It really is a fascinating process to watch, at least from my angle. And I think as I talk through 3 examples here, I'm realizing that I've got 3 distinct periods of time that I'm going to be talking about. Because obviously we mentioned the gentleman that read my article. We're at the very inception of changing the culture. We're at the very starting point. This other one, we've kind of dipped our toes in and have started the process. And then I'll give you another example of a gentleman who's taken active steps to get rid of kind of the rotten apple on the team and is experiencing, like you are, the results of that, the positive results of that. But this one example that we're dipping the toe in, same thing. He couldn't put his finger on what it was, just a very unhappy work environment, non-productive work environment. So one of the things that you've said quite a bit when it comes to culture is it diminishes the effectiveness of the team members. It's not just a feeling. It actually has financial consequences to the practice. And so this gentleman that I'm talking about, he's experienced that. Like, the practice is not as productive as it needs to be. He feels overstaffed because individuals are not working as hard as they should be working. And so he picked up on culture issues. I went in, definitely culture issues, just a generalized unhappiness. Nobody's on point. Nobody's got a clear idea of where we're headed, why we're headed there. Lots of infighting and finger pointing and just negativity, and anyway, so kind of stepping into that, he's trying to reset that culture. And a lot of that for him starts with very clear vision for the team. Dr. Jones and I, my dad.
That's exactly what I was thinking about his episode on vision.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about vision, and that's been part of what I've been working on with this team is, where are we headed? What do we want? What do we want the team to feel like? But also at the back of my mind, I'm a consultant and I'm always thinking about the health of the practice. So from a financial standpoint, what do we need this team to be producing, and how can we get our team members fired up for that? And so we're in the process of really reigniting a strong culture in his practice. But even in that, there can be this, I keep calling it kind of the rotten apple. There can be a person on the team that resists that change, or a couple of people that resist. So I think about your practice, and I do feel like that was very clearly what was happening with these 2 individuals. You never know, like, once I start working with a team on changing the culture, you never know who's going to get on board with it, who's going to be passionate about it, and who's going to resist. And then can we switch that resistance around? Can we get them back on track? And I would say oftentimes we can, but sometimes we can't. Which then brings me to my third person that basically we've done a ton of work with resetting the culture. His practice has been through a lot of changes. And we have done a fantastic job of kind of getting everybody on the same page, good systems. He's got a great team, but he had one that was just a thorn in the flesh from a culture standpoint. And no matter what we did, no matter how we revised her role and tried to really accommodate her preferences and her skill set, she just was a constant culture problem. Constant negativity, not a productive individual. And so she'd kind of be, pretending to be busy, but then would casually pass off work to her. Even though we reduced her role down to a very manageable job, she was constantly passing work off to other team members. Well, that doesn't feel good. When you see your non-productive team member that's taking a lot of coffee breaks, stepping outside all the time, just wandering around the office talking to people, and then they're passing work off to you, does not feel good. It's not a good culture thing. So eventually, after multiple attempts to get this person on board, he did make the difficult decision to dismiss her as well.
That sounds exactly like one of ours that we... And I just didn't see it, because to me, every time we talked, it seemed like we were on the same vision, and it seemed like she was interested in helping the patient and helping and, you know, being a team player. Like I still don't know if she thought she was, or if she was just very good at manipulating me. I don't know. But it took another team member who is very quiet, keeps her nose to the ground, and like doesn't stir things up at all. And it took me asking her directly, okay, well, how are your interactions with her? And she paused and she said, she's insubordinate. And I was like, ooh, that's a big word.
That's a strong word.
That's a strong word. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, well, she, you know, tends to just do what she wants to do. She knows this is the protocol. We shouldn't have to explain why, but even after we explain why, she continues to do it the way she wants to do it. And I think that for me was the tipping point there. Yeah. That, and you also had been echoing that. Multiple people had echoed that sentiment. And that's exactly.
And to me, sometimes that's the process that we need to walk through to identify the outlier. So sometimes when you've got a pervasive culture problem, you can't really figure out what's wrong, but you just know something's wrong. And then you start to try to turn the page. Like, okay, we're resetting and we are moving in a different direction, or in a clearer direction. It may not even be a different direction. It's just like we've got clarity now. This is where we're heading. This is why we're heading in that direction. Sometimes that process in and of itself is very clarifying. Because if you've got 9 out of 10 people that are like behind you, you know, marching behind you, like they are with me. And then you've got this one that kind of keeps meandering off and doing her own thing or his own thing. It becomes clear in that change process, like, oh, that's the problem. There's that problem again. And so your team members often see this before we do. That they're seeing the evidence of it, and thankfully, because we've got great team members, they're not constantly in your ear going, pss, pss, you know, she did this and now she did that. They're just quietly observing and taking it all in and putting up with it, I think is the best way to put it. And then finally, the evidence becomes clear enough to the doctor or owner that it's like, I've got to make this change. And it happened with your office, and I think we're seeing the extremely positive results of that. And same thing with my client that finally let this one culture problem go. He said it was like instantaneous the next day, that there was a lightness, there was a happiness. He was like, there was more communication. So it had become a team that was just not talking to one another because it wasn't a safe environment. They didn't want to interface with this one employee. And so they all just kind of kept to themselves and kept quiet. And he said literally the next day, it was like interdepartmental conversations and people kind of dropping by the front and having conversations that he said in a very positive way. It wasn't a negative thing. It was like, it's almost like that's what they had been waiting for. And to me, it's just such a testament to put in the effort to change and make it clear what the expectation is from a culture standpoint, and then watch what happens. Give everybody the chance to get on board with the new changes and the new direction, but also be willing to let that rotten apple go if they can't assimilate.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a really dumb question here.
Okay.
So what you're saying here, going, okay, we can tell something's off and we're going to reset culture, and have we clearly defined and where's our vision and where are we going? And my question to that is, I would assume, like in my mind, the whole reason I've started this practice and I show up is to help my patients. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, does the rest of the team not get that? Mm-hmm. Like, isn't the point is to get a patient in the door? If they are already in good dental health, great. We need to maintain you in great dental health. We'll see you in 6 months. And for those of you that have a cavity, we need to get you on the schedule to get that cavity fixed. And then we'll see you in 6 months. Like, to me, what is there to vision with that? You know what I mean? Like, that's the vision. We are fixing teeth to make sure we have oral health.
Yeah.
So to say we're going to reset that vision, okay, well, I didn't change anything I was thinking. I was still thinking I'm showing up here to take care of people's mouths because that's what I'm trained to do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So what can you kind of clarify, like, what does that mean to reset the vision?
Yes.
Because isn't the vision, or like when Dr. Jones was talking about the vision, like I see what he's saying, but I guess when I was trying to apply that to myself, I was going, well, my vision when I started my practice was I want to be able to do great dentistry. And the practice that I practiced in allowed me to do that, where I didn't have to, sedate kids if they didn't need to be sedated. I wasn't asked to do weird combos of sedatives. I wasn't asked to papoose children. I wasn't asked to pulpotomy everything. Like, it was really just take care of these children, and that's what I knew to do, and that's what I wanted to do. And then because I didn't want to live out here in the wilderness, I was like, okay, I could have easily been an associate in somebody else's practice. I never had a vision of starting my own because it sounded like, frankly, quite a pain in the ass. And I haven't been proven wrong on that, clearly. But my thought was, if I join another practice and they ask me to pulpotomy everything or, so I'm going to go start my own where somebody's thumb isn't over my head, bossing me to do something that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But the point is still to help patients, and that's what I'm there for. So that's the vision, is to help my patients. So for those of us that are struggling with that, going, how could the vision have changed? Like, when you talked about in your podcast with your dad, like suddenly you find yourself doing procedures you don't want to do, I guess because the vision was, I'm going to, do this different in my practice than when I was an associate. But now I guess I didn't clearly set out that I only wanted to work these hours, or I only want to do these procedures, or now because of my bank loan, I've got to see all of this stuff, and I've got to see kids that I don't want to see. And like, is that what you're talking about? How the vision goes off course? Yeah. So that's one way, but taking it back to employees and the culture, I guess I'm still struggling with going, what else do you want me to say? Right. I want to take care of these kids in an ethical fashion. Mm-hmm. Why do I need to restate that? I guess is my question.
I agree. And I think a lot of times the vision to me is, yes, patient care is kind of the easiest place to start because it's very tangible. It's like, are we doing the procedures that we like? Does the feeling of the day, as far as the busyness of it, does that fit what we like or not? So yes, there's that clinical component to it, but to me, vision goes beyond that. That's kind of our starting point in figuring out if this practice is what we want it to be. So quickly, before I make my next point, if, for example, a practice owner is like, yeah, I've got a practice that's way too busy. Every day I'm walking in stressed out because there's way too many patients on the schedule, but that day barely gets me to the production that I need. Okay, well, we've got a vision problem at that point, because you want a production that pays the bills, but the way that your schedule is run is wearing you flat out. Okay, well, then we've got to figure out how we change it. Either we're not scheduling effectively where there's enough production on the schedule, or insurance is, dragging us down, and we've got to rethink that and be able to run a practice that has a slower pace but is more productive per patient. So there's all those, like, are we on point with that vision? But to me, vision goes beyond just the patient care component and moves into the type of environment we're trying to create for our team and also for our families. So I always call it like the personality of the business. I can see those personalities very clearly as a consultant because of the practices I step into, just as easily as I sit across from somebody and can pretty much on point hit their personality. I can walk into a practice and get a general feel for the personality of the business. Like, for example, yours is more of a light, fun, happy, vibrant, we're going to have fun socks that we wear and t-shirts.
We don't take ourselves too seriously.
There's not a, uber serious, professional, like quiet environment. It's a fun, and you can sense that even from the decor when you walk in. There's a fun nature to it. And then the way team members are dressed, that reinforces the same fun nature. So that's kind of more of the personality of the business. And so is that personality of the business what we want it to be? Or is it not? So we've got the patient care component, but then we've got this uber stiff, quiet, we've got like elevator music playing in the background, and I just feel uncomfortable in my own office. Okay, well, what environment do you want to be in the office, and how do we begin to change that? And so that's what your patients certainly experience, but that's also what your team experiences. But then you take that to the next level and you go, okay, great. Like for your practice, I want a super uber fun environment, happy, energetic. We want to laugh and have fun, but we want to be extra efficient. We can have fun, but we're not going to be toting around all the time. Like fun has a limit. We've got work to do. So I would say while you've got a fun, vibrant atmosphere, you also want team members that are naturally productive. If their version of fun is, okay, great, I've got 15 minutes to my next patient, I'm going to go hang out and drink some coffee in the break room, that will not work in your office because that is not the culture that you've set. And so your team then has to calibrate towards the personality of not only the business and the environment that you want in there, but also the type of worker that you want on the team. And all of that to me is culture. So a lot of times I may get into a practice where they're doing the type of dentistry, this gentleman that reached out from the article, there's nothing wrong with the productivity of his business. He's like, we've got a very productive practice. I'm doing the procedures that I want to do. I enjoy my patients thoroughly. I enjoy my patients. So he's got that set. We're not going to go in. There's no need for me to go in and edit anything that they're doing from a clinical standpoint because that is his happy spot. He's actually very content there. What we're going to focus on is the personality of the business and the expectations of the team members because that's what's broken. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense. And it's also, I think, it's hard when you're your own, like all you see is what's in your walls. So to me, now that you mention it, you're right. Like if we do have an employee that comes in and wants to just kind of putz around here and there and not really like go, like what? Okay, I understand that, you're saving these to scan in at the end of the day. Why? You've had ample opportunity to do it throughout the day. Like it doesn't make sense to me. That's not efficient to just sit on them at the end of the day when you could have easily just scanned them in. But that's a very Kuba thing. Mm-hmm. I'm very much like, move. If you find yourself standing there, you're doing something wrong. And so you're right. Like the people that, but I wouldn't know, like to me, that's norm. Mm-hmm. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
But that's how it should be because that's me.
Right.
Versus somebody else's practice I could go into and it could be, apparently I have a colleague that one of my team members helps out in her office. And she's like, they block an hour to do sealants. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? So I think that colleague of mine would probably come into my practice and be like, are you out of your mind? Like, I cannot keep up with this pace. You're making my head spin.
Yeah.
And then I'm going into her office going, what the hell are you doing? Like an hour for sealants? I'm about to fall over out of boredom here. Move, let's go. Yeah. So there's not a right or wrong, but I think for me, I kind of lose sight of, like, of course it's going to be this way.
Right.
But no, it's going to be what that practice owner prefers.
Sets the expectation for. And humans function best with expectations. And sometimes we're like, it's simple. Just take care of the patients. But there are a million different ways to take care of a patient. And the team really needs to know, how does my doctor, my boss, want me to execute? So I always go back to with our family. I've always said we've got a little motto for our family. And one of the things that is a part of our motto is serve others. And so they know there's a lot of expectations we have of them, but it all centers around these three things that we say on repeat for our kids. And so when there are corrections that need to be made, there's certain kids of ours, they just naturally serve better. They're just better at it. They see the need, they proactively do it. My husband was just telling me about one of our sons that is just naturally gifted with this. And so I travel a lot for work, and he was telling me that Manolo my husband came out of getting ready, and they're up early when I'm gone. There's a lot to do. We got goats and dogs and all that fun stuff to take care of now. And so it's very early mornings here. And my husband walked out, and my son had put all the lunches in everybody's backpacks, had filled everybody's water bottles. My husband said I had nothing to do because he naturally went in and saw a need and did it. Well, that is praised in our family because we're like, you're living up to the standard that we set for you, which is to be a petty, you serve others. And you did that without being asked, okay, but that's a clear expectation that has been repeated to him over and over and over and over again. We lack that a lot in our dental offices because we're just like, just do your job. Well, what is my job? I don't know. Verify the insurance and then, put it in correctly. And but what's the theme? What do you want of me? Well, we want the most detailed job you can possibly do. So don't make mistakes on that verification. We hate mistakes in this office. Okay, that's different than just, hey, go verify insurance. Now we know, hey, my boss wants me to get as thorough of a verification as I possibly can. So I'm not just going to go off that fax back. I'm going to actually take the additional step of calling or logging on to the portal and looking at blah, 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 because he expects a very detailed insurance summary. The insurance verification, there's multiple levels of expectations that can be had just from that one task. So I think in a lot of practices, we talk in generalities, like we could with our kids. Just be good kids. Just be good. Well, what does that even mean? Okay, well, in our family, it means you serve others. Oh, okay. Now I'm looking for opportunities to live that out. We need that kind of clarity on our practice and in our teams. They need to know what the expectations are.
I think that clarifies for me so much of what you're saying, because I think as a practice owner, I'm assuming they know what that means, right. Be a good kid or verify insurance. Yeah. And to me, it's like, well, this is what I need out of it. But if I didn't tell you that, right, I can see where the miscommunication has come in now. Yeah. Because it's such a range.
On every task. Yeah. And again, we don't have to go through every task. Just like I wouldn't say to my kids every morning, like, okay, serving others. So what that means is this morning, Cosette, you're going to do this. And Kal-El, you're going to do this. And no, serve others in general. Then we talk about a lot of examples of that. But in general, they get so used to that concept of serving others, and we talk about it so much in general, that they figure out their own ways to then execute that. And that's what we do on the team. We find these themes that are really pivotal to our culture and who we are. And then we let our team members shine. Like there may be certain examples where we're like, well, what I mean by detail-oriented is on insurance verification, this, and this. We may have to clarify in some situations, but for the most part, if we talk about it enough and we highlight examples where our team members are living up to a certain expectation, then it becomes, oh, here's how I could be detail-oriented in this, or here's how I could up my game in this. And then they'll naturally start to escalate up to that particular expectation.
And you're right. I've seen that in my office too. And our staff that's been around for a while, they're the ones executing it. Now, I don't have to go and say, hey, can you document this? Can you do that? They know to do that. Yeah. So that's what you're talking about, like finding the right people. And then as new people come on, and we've coached and led by example, and they're still not following that example, then that might be the moment where you're like, you're the outlier.
Exactly. And spotting that, trying to get them, because I think you put a lot of effort into these two ladies on the team, trying to get them calibrated up to that particular level, and then ultimately being willing to move on when that, because it's not worth risking the culture to keep trying. So at some point there is an end. And I think I've got you as a testament that reminds me of it's okay to move on. And then my other client that released that one culture problem, he's experiencing the same benefit of that. So anyway, I think it's a good revisit of spot your rotten apples. Make sure though that they know why they're rotten. You've got to set a really clear environment for why they stand out from the rest so that they have a chance to at least try to get back on track. But yeah, I think that's a good reminder. And I would also say too, this is one of those topics we've got a lot more like tangible, practical takeaways and
how-tos, like how to do this.
Yes, which those how-tos are coming in a whole new format, which is our subscriber model that we'll be launching here in the next few weeks. And we're going to have lots of additional tips and takeaways and just real practical next steps for people that are trying to create this. So definitely tune in. If you're not a subscriber, become one so that you can get those additional how-tos.
Okay, Bethany, I gotta tell you about a conversation I had the other day that I thought was so funny. So I'm talking to a colleague of mine who I think is super smart, and he's having some questions about what's his next move in his professional career moves. And I said something like, do you have somebody helping you? And he knows that I work with you. And so he knew I was alluding to you. And he said, no. And so I said, well, have you ever thought about it? And he's like, maybe I will, and I'll hire somebody. And, once I kind of figure out like all the things that they know and I master that, then I don't think I would continue with the consultant. And I just thought that was so funny, and I wanted to know, because obviously you're said consultant, and to me I was like, oh yeah, Bethany has a checklist of like 10 things that she does, and once I master that, maybe I haven't mastered those 10 things because I'm slow and I still need you. Can you comment on any of that?
So the example I always use, the example of professional athletes. I think of Michael Jordan, I think of LeBron James, and these are people at the top of their career, the top of the top, and yet they still have coaches.
I'm glad to hear you say that. This is where you and I have worked together long enough, because that's exactly what I said to him. And I said, oh, okay, so LeBron doesn't have any more coaches, right? Because he's already won so many championships. He's already learned all the things that all the coaches can help him with. He just looked at me. But I tell you, for such a smart guy, this was such a dumb comment. Like, it's just laughable. And I don't understand why more dentists don't take advantage of coaching and consulting. It's laughable. I'm so glad you're here and you do what you do, and you are worth every penny. And please tell me you have space next year for more of your consulting courses.
We do. We have a couple of spots available. So should the hashtag be "Don't Be a Dummy," call us. Get yourself to that consulting crash course as quickly as possible.
Don't be laughable.
Don't be laughable.